Yeah, so my name's Amelia Lindemann, if we don't know each other yet, and I work for School of Love. Today, we're going to talk about keeping our children safe from pornography. And so I invited also Andrew Love to speak with me. We're going to talk, both of us. Yeah, because he has a lot of experience in this area working for High Noon, CEO, right? I think you're the CEO right now of High Noon. Yeah. So, yeah, I invite you to put your cameras on if you can, just so it's nicer for us as speakers to really engage with you, see if we're coming across yeah, we're understanding each other. Of course, yeah, we understand if you can't, especially if you're driving or something. But yeah, and another thing, if you guys have any questions, just send them over in the chat or to me, and we'll get to answering them at the very end of our talk slash presentation. So, yeah, I'm sure people are just going to start pouring in now. So, yeah, we'll give them a few minutes to come in, but yeah, we're going to just have to start. So, yeah, Stefan is also here from Düsseldorf. He is our technician. So thank you, Stefan, for doing that. Okay, so keeping our kids safe from pornography. I recently listened to a masterclass from a fellow parent who, yeah, she gives courses teaching parents how to keep their children safe online. Aisling O'Connor. I think she's Welsh. I'm not so sure exactly if I said her name right, but yeah, she says you don't need to get it perfect. You just need to start. And the thing is, I think we all have a starting point already built up. I think it's really important to know this connection that we have with our child. This is already our starting point, and it's the best thing to continue investing into to really keep our kids safe. And yeah, so we're going to just go right into it to our first slide. Okay, so where do kids even see pornography? Yeah, basically any connection to the internet is connection to more than thousands and thousands of strangers. And that's why it can be dangerous, right? We don't know all those people. And so experts say as soon as you give your child a device that is connected to the internet, we should also be teaching them to become internet savvy, or basically also teach them how can they be prepared if any inappropriate content comes up, just so they know what to do. Um, so, so these are just some examples of where we can encounter pornographic things. YouTube Kids I was pretty surprised to hear about this recently, that sometimes, there are cartoons there and they start out normal, but then it later turns into inappropriate content. Or online games is also very popular because strangers talk to our kids and then they build trust with our kids. And then they meet on other platforms where things can happen like sextortion or, sharing information that is really not meant to be shared. And then it's also, I think, really important to not forget that our culture itself is pretty, pretty pornified. If you look at TV and films, or even just any kind of advertising, sexualized content is really normalized, and it can be easy to become, yeah, desensitized. So it becomes normal to see certain images, certain content, to hear certain things. And yeah, then, but that's not what we want to be normal for our kids, right? We want them actually to, yeah, to look towards an ideal marriage, a blessing, and to not take any of this culture with them. And so I think, yeah, it's just good to really be aware of any kind of media consumption as a family. Like, yeah, what are we really looking at? And take it in really critically. Yeah, and I also don't want to leave books out because they are also very influential. And Yeah, especially books that are coming out now, they not only have things like dark romance or sexual themes, but also concepts of, yeah, things that are in the media today, like gender theology and all of that are in books for teenagers. And so, yeah, it's just all of these kind of things. If it's really, especially our children's first contact with any kind of sexual content, it can leave an impression. And so it's really important that we are aware as parents to just really keep up the connection so we know, okay, what is my child consuming? And that they know they can come to me if they find anything disturbing or uncomfortable, or just they have plain questions about it. Yeah. So I just wanted to put that out there for you guys to be aware of. And yeah, it's not to scare anybody, but it's just to really be aware that, we really are surrounded by this self-centered sexuality, which is really what do you, destructive, right? It's very destructive. So yeah, let's move on to the next slide, which is from Andrew's side.
Hello, everybody. So, yeah, I mean, we've been seeing the result of this a lot in high noon over the years, right? What happens when people are exposed to it, and I would say nearly impossible. The amount of people who are not exposed to porn are, decimal fractions of the people that we meet, right? So what happens is that for sure, exposure to pornography distorts your relationships and your expectations that you have with the people in your life. Because a pornified brain, which is a term of just like, it's like a lens that you see the world through. It just, you start to sexualize things that have no business being sexualized. And it's just because you are projecting these images that you've seen onto your own life. So you watch a movie, which are images in, and then that creates images and ideas of when you see the world around you, right? So it's something that you wouldn't normally do unless you had been influenced, right? So when you when you get exposed, you bring this stuff around with you. We've done multiple informal surveys with people asking if they remember the first time they watched porn, and most people, the vast majority of people remember with crystal clear detail where they were, how old they were, what they saw, what they watched, how it made them feel. It's shocking, right? And so that, of course, in the animal world, there's something called imprinting. And like with ducks, the first thing that they see becomes their mommy. And it could be a bicycle, a human, or it could be their actual mom. It could be a fox. It could be like another species of animal. That's what they think is their mom. And same with sexual imprinting is a very real thing because you'll see in a later slide or later point in this, I'll just jump down. The neurological impact is that you start to conflate your experience that you have when you're a little kid, seeing something shocking and scary for the first time. When you see pornography, and the average age of exposure that I've seen across the board from Barna Study Group, they're a Christian survey company, but also from our own surveys. We've done thousands of surveys within our unifications community. Average age of exposure is around 11. Okay. So when you're 11 and then you see these images, high definition images of people doing stuff you don't quite understand, it's scary and there's it's very confusing, but it's also very exciting because naturally, biologically, it's so you have this consortium of emotions from the worst emotions you could have by yourself, which is like, I've done something wrong and I'm bad, to this feels really good. And that becomes a part of your sexual template as you go through your formative years when you're exposed to porn. So you can imagine you go through your adolescence and then you go into marriage even with these weird conflicting feelings of arousal matched with negative feelings of fear, anger, whatever you're inheriting from this whole experience, right? So yeah, it influences you in ways that you might be aware of, but many more ways that you do not understand growing up. You just think, oh, this is what I like. This is my sexual preference. It's, we hear that a lot, and we hear a lot of people worrying about that when they go to the blessing, if they'll be sexually compatible with somebody. And this is all just a byproduct of living in a broken world because the sexual template of a blessed couple should be neutral, right? And you're just coming in to create something from scratch. But in reality, we've all been influenced by culture, right? But porn is, sorry, loud one second. Porn is very, very, very influential towards a young person's proclivities towards sex, their expectations. And that's why we have to intervene by not just helping them to unpack if they have seen porn, but also to help them formulate healthy visions. And we will get into that in subsequent slides. Amelia, I'm going to pass back to you.
All right, thank you. So, yeah, what does pornography do to the brain? Yeah, it's interesting. So, like Andrew said, like if someone sees something that's a pornified image or a video, it's like a short, huge shot of dopamine, um, which, it's actually a reward hormone. And unfortunately, it can be used in a good way, this hormone, but if it's connected to a habit that is not healthy, that's very unfortunate, right? Because this can become very addictive, um, and take us away, lead us away from what is actually healthy for us. You know, so short, intense pleasure for a very short time, rather than normal experiences. Like playing outside and maybe building a hut or a tree house or something like that. That's also can be very rewarding, but we are less sensitive to that because of continuous, yeah, we want the high hit of dopamine, not like the slow thing. Someone I heard the comparison is also like, when you eat a piece of fruit and then it tastes sweet, but if you first eat a super sugary donut and then the fruit doesn't taste good anymore. And so it's kind of like, yeah, it's like eating the thing that's not healthy for us, consuming the thing that's not healthy for us, and then we miss out on the good stuff, which actually has the vitamins. Like this play outside or play with people, that is really what is nourishing our kids. And so, yeah, that's also one danger aside from all that Andrew was mentioning. And then, of course, yeah, yeah, also, I read recently in a book from a sexologist that I got to interview. She has a Christian background. It's called Talking Sex by the Book. It's a really good book. I recommend it. And in the book, it says the teenagers or tweenagers, their neuroplasticity is really high. It's like really being formed, like Play-Doh. We all have that neuroplasticity, but at that time of life, they're especially vulnerable. And so, yeah, just imagine how much more vulnerable they are when they have contact with pornography and when that is also influencing their image of what sex is, what a relationship is, or also just, how they consume or spend their time. You know, it's, yeah, it's really sad to think, that can really become such a strong pull, just because, they're still developing, they're in a really crucial time in their lives where, they're turning from kids slowly into adults. Yeah. So, yeah, kids can just be really misinformed in the end by these images, by yeah, these lies that are portrayed in pornography. Um, but yeah, we can do something about it with proper education. Um, and yeah, I mean, I've said this before, but it's so important that kids know that sexuality is a good thing, and when we can have that conversation early in life, to talk about God's creation of sex, then they can know the original blueprint, the original idea God had. But it's just a pity when their first encounter with anything sexual is so ugly and distorted. They then of course they think, oh, sex is bad and evil. And maybe I'm evil too if I have any kind of desire to watch that. So yeah, there's just this possibility of being very misinformed. Yeah, I'll pass it on to Andrew.
Thanks, Chief. So yeah, I think starting early is the best. Just the end goal is not to have all the answers. The end goal is always to be curious about your kid, just in a similar way that your kid is, is curious about life. And when imagine somebody's curious about some room in the house and they want to know what's in there, and you every time they're like about to go in the room, you shout at them like they're gonna have a pretty dysfunctional relationship with that room of the house. It's gonna become terrifying to them. They're gonna be unbelievably curious. They'll be, I mean, I can't imagine. I'd be obsessed with like, what's in this? I was the type of kid that would probably break into that, room to find out. But it's the opposite of how we're meant to approach it. If, anything in life, if you can start being curious about your kid, it means that they will have questions that are uncomfortable for you to answer at first. But that's just practice. When you start doing the work of caring enough to answer sincerely, um, based on their age, based on their curiosity, it creates this open door of possibilities to really getting to know each other. And otherwise, you're blocking true connection from happening, to be honest. And so, like, I remember the beginning when I started High Noon, I had two sons at that time. Now I have three. And my eldest was like 4 or 5. And I remember teaching him just very simply, hey, buddy, what happens if you see naked people on a screen of any kind? He said, come to you, right? The idea was that he would just come to me and we talk about it. I don't know what I would do next. I would sit and talk with him, right? We'd unpack it. But since then, now he's on the precipice of 12. We've had so many conversations about girls, about, nudity, about everything. And it's just the main point is that I want to always have an open door policy where he can ask me everything and always feel much more inclined to ask me than asking Google or asking his friends. And especially the more I feel like we have a, a deep enough rapport at this point that even if he were to ask his friends, their answers would feel incomplete compared to what he would get from me. And even if he asked Google, that it wouldn't quite make sense because he'd get an intellectual response without the heart that I would give because I care about him much more than anybody else in this world. So of course, I want to create the atmosphere for him to just kind of ask. So starting early doesn't mean like, anatomy or anything like that necessarily. It just means rapport. Rapport is this magical ingredient that allows love to flow. It's trust. The foundation of trust is rapport. Is like when they're like, should I tell them or should I not tell them? They'll err more on the side of, I will tell my parents, even if they've done something difficult or shameful, if there's rapport. And rapport is the continuous showing that you will hear them out and you'll give them the benefit of the doubt and you'll show them grace and they'll keep on coming back to you. Um, but it's good to have action plans and that's part of the rapport too, is like we talk a lot and I just wondering like what do you guys know? Like what do your friends say? Uh yeah, and sometimes it's shocking. And so the point is to try not to react, to be like, wow, I didn't know that. What do you think about that? Right. And just again, being curious. That's the practicing responses is we've seen this time and again that when a child goes to a parent with difficult information, the parent freaks out, they scare their kid away, and their kid doesn't want to come back to their parent. It takes a lot. It takes very little to scare your kid away, and it takes a lot to rebuild that trust. So just learning how to take a breath, right? Doesn't mean having a perfect reaction. I don't think there is a perfect reaction, but it's stifling the urge to smother and to control, and instead take a breath and try to have your first impulse to be one of grace. That's why at High Noon we always ask parents to, whatever your kid says to you, no matter how difficult, just really try to say the words, thank you. Thank you for coming to me. Right? That's the starting point, is thank you for coming to me. My God, must have been difficult. Thank you so much. Right? That's the beginning point of grace. And then you can figure things out after that, right? So the last point here is just the more frequent you check in with your kid about all aspects of their life, including their curiosities, including, did you see that couple on the bench kissing? Because I think you did, and I saw them. Did you see them? What did you think? And like this kind of thing, that's like, that's what I think we all wished we had as kids instead of what most of us got, which is like you see kissing on TV and then your parents change the channel. They're like, oh my God, Mayday, Mayday. They throw the TV out the window or they block your eyes and I'm like, what? Why is this such an intense thing that we have to run away from it, right? Instead, just talking about it and regularly so that, again, it just makes sense for them to talk to you. Why? Because they feel good when they talk to you and because they're in frequent conversation with you anyway. So it's like their native language is speaking to you. That's the goal here. And it's like it's a form of attraction that your kids become attracted to having conversations with you. And it feels weird to have conversations with other people first. That would be the goal. So back to you, Amelia.
Thanks. So, yeah, building trust through conversation. It's kind of picking up where Andrew left off. Yeah, to just keep the dialogue open, I feel like there are plenty of examples in this world where you can just say, yeah, what did you think of that? Or if your kids are already asking you questions, to really welcome those questions. Yeah. And also, yeah, to keep talking about it. Like, I've had conversations with my kids who are all different ages, 4, 8, 10, and 12, right? It's all very different stages of life. So I have to check in and see, okay, like, who understands what right now? And to really see, okay, yeah, are you watching out with what you consume? And do you remember, like, what's God's plan for you, and ask gentle questions. It's like, yeah. So full disclosure, one of my kids has a phone, our eldest. And so we want to be up to date with, what's going on and really make it our business. From experts I heard about Protect Young Eyes, they say when your child has a device, it should be not announced as theirs, but really as either a family device or it's the parents and they're sharing with their child. And so this is just so you have this accountability naturally in place. And yeah, just show interest. Like, okay, what are your friends doing there these days on their phone? You know, like what are the most popular apps? Um, and do you think they're happy using them or not? Just to keep up the interaction and keep your conversation span open in this area too. And yeah, staying calm. That's also what Andrew was saying, because, you know, it could be that we have this open conversation and someday maybe our child will say, "Oh, hey, yeah, we talked about this," or "I saw this." Um, and it can be shocking sometimes. And it's important to know we're not like to sh not show we're disappointed in them in any way, but yeah, really say thank you. Oh, thanks for telling me about this. I really appreciate that. Um, and yeah, that can really build up the habit that they come to you again. The other day, we were at the library, and my son really likes to read this one. It's actually a children's book, but it's like a book slash comic. And yeah, he flipped through the pages and then he saw that like all the characters were kissing. And then he's like, oh. And then he just pointed it and looked at me and was like, oh yeah, thanks for showing me that. And and I was just like, yeah, let's just read it together, you know, and make sure you don't read something on your own and get some weird ideas. We'll read that part together. Um, yeah. And yeah, affirming your children's courage. So it does take bravery, right? To do something when you're not 100% sure how your parents will react. So yeah, we need to give them that stability. Like we're going to react calmly and we're going to reward them for their courage. And then talk about, you know, a game plan, or just, yeah, how to sort out whatever it is that the topic is. Um, yeah, I mean, it takes courage to open up on any kind of secret in any relationship. Um, Not saying that this might be a secret, you know, maybe you already have this open communication in place, but yeah, I think it really is something to applaud when our kids come to us. And back to Andrew.
Dankeschön. I just wanted to say, quick side note. This is like a revelation I had last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago. I've been traveling. Whenever I travel a lot, uh, I get, your brain is in new situations, sometimes sleep deprived because time zones, whatever. But you just are exposed to new parts of your brain. And one thing that I realized is that when I began my journey with High Noon, I was really working hard to create an environment to protect my kids at all cost. And I still am to some degree working to protect them, but I'm actually much more optimizing for resilience rather than inoculation kind of thing. Meaning, we still have a very strong and open communication, but I'm also aware of the fact that yesterday I'm in Mongolia right now, and I decided to walk up. We live on the 12th floor of a building, and I walked up the stairs for the first time. I just was feeling feisty, wanted to challenge myself. And on the fifth floor, between fifth and sixth, something like that, there's a giant penis drawing on the wall because apparently everywhere in the world they do that. There's that kid, you know. I remember them growing up. There's always that one kid that draws that thing. And so, like, obviously, we're gonna walk down the stairs at some point and see it. And so, I'm not gonna like force them to not see it, but I'm not as worried about them seeing stuff like that anymore. And I realize that part of that energy of worry is really consuming, and you also project that when you have conversations with them, and you don't want to give them that worry. You want to be realistic, obviously, and help them understand that there are things to be cautious of. There's predators out there and stuff like that. But I think it's much better in terms of a long-term strategy to create resilient kids that know who they are and know what they want out of life. Because if they get sidetracked, they're much more likely to bounce back and go back to the place where they want to be instead of just trying to inoculate, but not strengthening and empowering. So I just wanted to kind of say that's been a pretty big realization that I had, and it pertains to this. So uh, part of this early education is like I think it's important for kids to understand, age appropriate, the anatomy of the human body, but also to have family idiom for sexual organs and for sexuality, again, age appropriate, but like we use actually Mongolian vernacular to describe sexual organs because that's just how we grew up. We're like when we're talking about their bits and pieces, when they're in the shower or whatever, that's just been our thing. So it's very friendly and very familiar. And so I think to have something familiar that makes sense to your family, almost like a code word in a sense, that it's like this is our thing, is super healthy because it familiarizes when you're talking about these things. Um, it brings it home to a nice place because my kids know what their friends say, in terms of penis, but then at home, what we call that is very different, and it's like our family's thing. So I think it's a good strategy to have both the awareness of the science, but also the familiarity of your own language that you use that feels like home. Um, Also, the second point about knowledge through protection, I read a testimony on Fight the New Drug. They interviewed this guy who's a convict. He's a sexual predator, and he was talking about his strategy for grooming young ladies would be going to the mall and he'd go up to young ladies who were without their parents, teens, and he'd go and compliment them on how beautiful they were. And he could tell exactly if he had a victim or if he would leave somebody alone based on their reaction. And he said this, if he complimented a young woman and said, "You're very beautiful," and she said, "Yes, I am, thank you," and she knew her value, then he would walk away. But if he complimented her and said, "You're very beautiful, did you know that?" And she would look down on the ground and she would say, "Oh, I don't know." And she became very self-conscious. He knew that he could manipulate her because she did not know her own value. Where is this value meant to come from? Within the family. There's this sleazeball. I mean, anyway, personal opinion. His name is Machine Gun Kelly. He's a hip hop artist and a pop artist. I'm not a big fan, but I heard him talking about his daughter, and he is famous, but he's left millions of dollars on the table for not going on tour because he spends time with his daughter, who's now like 16 or 17, playing volleyball with her, coaching her one on one. He's like a big time celebrity, but he spends time with her in Ohio just investing in her. And he said, and I quote, well, let's say paraphrase, he said, "I say I love you so much and you're so beautiful so much so that if some guy, some random guy says you're so beautiful, she doesn't feel it nearly the same as she does for me. So he can't manipulate her. He can't have her the same way." And like, that's from a guy who's probably done that to many a lady, right? So he knows the tricks and that's how he's invested in his daughter. So a lot of this sense of value comes from education and spending time. You can't cut corners in terms of building trust and rapport. It's like an investment. You can't just skip to having an investment portfolio. It takes years, right? Similarly, love is an investment that really pays dividends over time. That's sitting with people. It's having difficult conversations. And that is such value. I would say just offhand, far more valuable education is the implicit trust rather than the tips and tricks that you can offer them through reading a blog or whatever. That stuff is very helpful, but based on the foundation of trust laid by investing in them, time, time and attention. Um, and if you help them understand themselves and know their worth, that comes out with their body too, because we're all self-conscious. We are all everybody on this call is self-conscious about some aspect of your physical body. That's I mean, I know that because I knew models growing up and they were the most self-conscious. So if they're super self-conscious, how do you think we all feel, right? So your kids feel that, especially if they're exposed to TikTok and all this, which is creating massive amounts of body paranoia and self-confidence issues and that kind of stuff. So helping them to understand the uniqueness and the value that they are beyond that, but also understanding that, bodies are different and like getting to know their body. I guess I'll just end this slide on this that again, I keep on referring to high noon, but high noon and school of love are one and the same. But like the catchphrase that I say to myself, and I often say to people that I speak with, what is high noon, right? It's what we're trying to do is we're trying to help people to create a life that they don't want to escape from anymore. That's one of the biggest problems in our society these days is people want to run away from their life because things are so overwhelming. But what if you created a life where you loved yourself so much you didn't want to run away? You wanted to, even when things are going bad, you want to fix it. Why? Because you care so much about the life that you love so much. That includes your body, right? That you don't just eat your problems away, but you invest in being healthy. And so our kids need that as well. They need healthy body image comes from loving yourself. It's some external factors, right? Taking care of yourself, basic stuff, hygiene, whatnot. That's a part of it. But um again, based on the foundation of them actually caring enough to love themselves, that they would want to take care of themselves. You can get somebody to, I have a preteen and we have to encourage him to shower a little bit more than before because he's starting to, become ripe a little bit more, when he sweats. And that's fine. So to like encourage that basic stuff so that he understands that you got to work a little bit harder to take care of yourself as you go through puberty. That's well and good, but why would you want to do that if you don't love yourself? So again, spending time is kind of like a non-negotiable, and part of that time is really giving your attention, your focus, and listening. And Amelia, I'm going to give it back to
Thank you very much. So, yeah, safe responses. I think to, when we build on this connection that we already have with our kids, and we bring up, you know, so yeah, Andrews gave one example of how we can just say, hey, like, if you see any inappropriate content, come to me, right? And when we say something like that, we really need to give them the assurance that it's safe to come to you. And yeah, I was also talking about this recently with some parents. Like, okay, how do I start this conversation of pornography? Especially, maybe they've heard of it before. Maybe someone has stolen this conversation from me, and I don't know where to pick up from. So I think, and especially if you think, pornography is going to trigger their curiosity and make them go search for it. Yeah, I think you can also just say, hey, what do you know about screen safety? And just try to understand where they're at. And yeah, and then you can pick up from there. And yeah, I think when you pick up from wherever your child is at, it's really important to say, yeah, I want to be there for you if there is anything that you see or you're just not sure about, and let's talk about it. And yeah, and I think rehearsing this can be a really helpful thing to do if your child is up for that. Rehearsing for their sake and also for our sake as parents, because, it's not easy to always react in the way that we think is best for our kids. Yeah, so it's really helpful to practice these responses in moments that are not threatening. It's not an emergency moment, so I have the I have the peace of mind to react how I want to, and then we can remember that for later. And it can be helpful for our kids too. I had something happen with one of my kids. She wasn't shown pornography, but it was a brutal scene from a TV series that her friend showed her on a tablet, and she couldn't sleep well for the next few days, you know, it was too much for her. And so she really regretted seeing that. And I regretted not rehearsing with her because I had actually rehearsed with my other kids for a situation specifically like this. Um, just, yeah, for example, I told them if, you know, someone says they want to show you something on a device or even anything, you can, instead of letting them just put it in your face without any consent, you can just say, stop, please let me know what it is you want to show me. You know, tell me what it is. And yeah, this gives them at least some time to consider, is that what I want to see or not? Um, and yeah, so after this incident happened, then we practiced a lot with my family, just, you know, better ways that we can react and have a bit more control in a situation like that. Um, yeah, and yeah, I think so. This one lady that I mentioned in the beginning who teaches parents how to keep their kids safe online, uh, she says, don't ever, ever use a punishment as a reaction to hearing if your child had any contact with inappropriate content, you know, if they saw pornography or, you know, something happened. Because this just builds up a relationship of fear when they report to you. Like, oh no, if I tell them about this, you know, they'll take this away from me. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I think this is just, I just say it's from her because um, I think everyone has to think for themselves of what is best. But yeah, I think it is just really important to make this, whenever a child comes to us, to really make it a positive experience, you know, and really use, um, or just dive into the connection that we have with our child. And yeah, yeah, sometimes we'll make mistakes because, you know, it's hard to tell. We're all parents for the first time, and each kid is also different. So we parent them, each character for the first time. And so it's really, yeah, it's not going to be perfect all the time. And I think it's important that we all really give ourselves grace. Go to God if you really need to feel that, if you can't find it for yourself. And just, yeah. So the point is not to always try to avoid mistakes, but also just manage whatever happens, you know? Um, yeah. And yeah, also kind of like what Andrew said, preparation is protection. So if you also just rehearse things, then your kids can be more prepared when some situation arises. In the book, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, they also talk about this, like an action plan. What if, you know, something comes up on the screen that I don't want to see? And so they talk about this in the book, you know, how to react to those kinds of things. And, you know, there's even an acronym. I don't remember it right now, but it's like stop, close the screen, and go tell a grown up, and then do something positive, you know, so you can lighten the mood and not, you know, dwell on that negativity that you had, that the child just saw. Yeah, so I think there are really useful tools out there that can just help you feel more ready for any kind of situation that happens. Yeah, Defend Young Minds is a website that has a lot of good, yeah, good advice for this kind of thing. And yeah, to just really practice these things when it's a lighthearted environment. Yeah. All right. I'll pass it back to you, Andrew.
Right. So I feel like, we've largely gone over this, so just really quickly. Um, yeah, your relationship with your kids will go up and down regardless of how hard you try to be perfect or whatever, right? But again, if the foundation is strong, they'll always come back to you. That's what we've seen time and again with difficult situations in our movement, when kids go way into left field. Um, their foundation with their parents is often what brings them back to their faith, or what causes them to get blessed, and or to give it another try. You know, it's that sense of you need a place in this world, in this physical world, where you can reveal yourself and be loved. The idea is to be naked and unashamed. Fully is like spiritually naked, emotionally naked in front of somebody. And if not us as their parents, then who? Who are we asking? We're kind of expecting them to be something other than themselves, their true selves. And at some point, they're going to have difficult questions, or they're going to be exposed to stuff that really is challenging to us. And um, can we be there to offer them grace in those moments? And that will define, a lot of our subsequent relationship. And so, yeah, it's like, especially with sex, I'm very cautious to not bring my work home too much, because when I was growing up, I remember the most messed up kids, their parents were always psychologists, right? Who like over psychoanalyze their kids. So I didn't want to do that to my kids. I didn't want to like work and overcompensate, or like I just wanted to build a really healthy relationship with them, and I'm still working at it. Definitely, I screw up still, but the point is that this is another point. Relationship with your kids also really is hindered or helped by your relationship with your spouse, because they're watching you too, and they your ability to, as a couple, discuss openly about what you're struggling with, on every level, but especially with sexuality, bleeds into your relationship with your kids and your either comfort or discomfort. And to have kind of a high noon relationship is to not ever worry about perfection, but rather really prioritize sincerity, honesty, like the five virtues, which School of Love also has: honesty, accountability, grace, integrity, courage. When we live these things together as a couple, that's our foundation to then impart them onto our kids. It's a lot easier, right, to do so. And so your relationship is, yeah, like a safety net for when things go sideways, that you can come back to something. So I would say a lot of people right now in our world are drifting because they don't have a family to come back to, right? They don't have a safety net. They don't have that feeling of being warmly embraced, like a sweater, nice perfect sweater. Our family is meant to be our sweater, right? Our place that we come back to recalibrate and to recharge. But if they don't feel that with us, when the world is chaotic and then the home is also chaotic, then there's no place for them to rest. And so it's not easy. It's never something that we ever suggest, is that any of this is necessarily easy in the beginning, especially, but it can become second nature the more that you prioritize it. And I would say that that's a culture that requires upfront effort, but when the culture is naturally occurring after, some upfront work, then it largely just requires maintenance, the maintenance of these relationships. Um, yeah, and don't ever worry about making uh like I'm gonna screw up my kids by talking with them. Look, yes, you might have some uncomfortable conversations. And you'll think, oh, later, I wish I didn't say that or whatever. But then you can even say that to them. It's like, look, I said some really silly things. I'm learning too. I think that's one of the greatest gifts, is to let your kids know that this is the first time you've been a parent yourself, and this is the first time they've been a kid. And if you can work together and be on the same team to be the best kid and to be the best parent, then we all win, right? But you have to give each other a little bit of grace. Um, and then, yeah, sometimes you are the problem, right? Sometimes their frustration with you is the stress. And so the more that you try to talk to them, the more that you make things worse. Sometimes they need a little bit of space. And that's why it's good during the good times to also pull in some friends, some neighbors, some aunts, uncles, and we have a worldwide community of amazing people to pull from, right? Our faith community is bar none the greatest ever in history because you can land on a plane in pretty much any country and be welcomed into people's homes. So there's a litany of amazing people to pull from. Try to bring those people into their lives too, so that there's like additional support for your family. If there's strain in the relationship between your kids, that they naturally then feel compelled to go to their aunts or uncles, right? Adopted or biological. Um, that really, really helps. That you are their number one, but that there's also a number two when there's strain. So that Google is a distant third, and their friends are, way down on the list. Okay, back to you, Amelia.
Thank you. Yeah, we're coming to an end here. This is our presentation. And yeah, School of Love is growing. Like Andrew said, I think, building up community is just really a great support. And so when we know we're in this together, we're growing together, yeah, then we can be even more empowered to move forward. So if you're not yet a part of it, please join our WhatsApp uh, community. And yeah, Stefan will also put a link in the chat for that. You can just click it and join. And we also have lots of podcasts that you can listen to, and also boot camps if you really feel like you need a helping hand to start these conversations. Although the boot camps are really focused on getting started on the conversation of sex related topics at home in your family with your kids. So, yeah. And also, if you just want to reach out, you can always contact me by WhatsApp and High Noon staff as well. Andrew Benji also said he's ready to support any parents. So, yeah, if you have any questions, like what do I do? We really want to help you. And yeah, I just want to say I started working for School of Love a year ago, and a lot of these topics were uncomfortable for me to talk about. But I just kind of went cold turkey and started talking about them with my kids. And, it's a lot more comfortable now. And so with practice, and with just an understanding of how valuable this is for your kids, you can make the tone of these conversations from, maybe awkward and uncomfortable, but really grow into them becoming a normal, even enriching thing, a really enriching experience. And yeah, so I'm just so grateful that I was kind of blessed to be able to work in such a valuable area. But I just want other parents to know that they can do the exact same thing, or even better. And then please connect with me when you do it even better, because yeah, we need to grow in this conversation and really let our kids know that God really wants them to thrive, in their sexuality. But yeah, that we need to watch out for lots of things in this world. So yeah, that's where we'll end it. If anyone has questions, please ask now. Um, yeah, I'm just going to stop the recording.